Specializing in the finest assortment of oboes, clarinets, bassoons, and their accessories, RDG Woodwinds serves musicians around the world. Their employees are all professional musicians who have a deep knowledge of the products that they sell. RDG's repair shop has an international reputation with a combined 100 plus years of service among the 5 repair technicians. Plain and simple, RDG provides excellent products and fabulous customer service. Visit them at rdgwoodwinds.com. They look forward to working with you.
Barton Cane offers a huge variety of GSP cane. Leave the cane processing to them. Use coupon code DoubleReedDish rocks my world for free shipping on your next Barton Cane order. www.bartoncane.com.
Hi, I'm Galit Kaunitz.
And I'm Jackie Wilson, and you're listening to Double Reed Dish,
a podcast for oboists,
bassoonists,
and the people who love them.
So, Galit, we're going to do kind of a COVID-themed dish, but it may be our last or among our last.
I hope so. I hope with every fiber of my being.
Well, you are fully vaccinated at this point. Yes.
Yeah.
And I did not tell you this, but I got my appointment for my first shot on Saturday.
Stop it. That's amazing.
Yes. Washington has kind of loosened things up and taken a more liberal definition that includes those who work with K through 12. And of course, Chris and I both teach private lessons. So we were able to make an appointment in good standing without cutting the line. So yeah, I'm super excited. But of course, you know, different timelines for different people. I've been incredibly frustrated watching everyone get their shot. And so I know there are people listening going, good for you. Like, that was very frustrating for me. But we must, you know, abide by these protocol until, you know, everyone has had the opportunity and access, and that includes our performances. And so we thought, if for nothing other than a time capsule to look back, double regeneration.
Traumatizing time capsule.
Like maybe our grand students will want to know what it was like.
When I was your age, I had to wear a mask and a bell cover, and I had to walk to school in the snow uphill both ways.
That's what we'll be. Yes, that's what we'll tell our grand students when they're complaining about their read or something. We'll be like, oh, have you ever learned to make reads over Zoom? And they'll think of Zoom like how our students now think of like cassettes or records.
People will like use Zoom ironically.
Oh, yeah. And we'll all be like riding hoverboards to Mars.
I hope so. The day somebody like wears an ironic Zoom t-shirt is a good day for me.
So we thought we would talk about what has performing looked like in the pandemic for us, just kind of literally. I mean, neither of us had to use a bassoon bag, but bless those of you who did. I look at that and I'm just like, what is happening there?
Have you seen those like clear plastic cages for students? Little like individual tents to play in.
Yeah, it's like the Marcel Marceau Orchestra.
Oh, I wish that our listeners could see us both doing the hand thing.
But so this has been on my mind because I recently had to do my first faculty recital at WSU. I'm trying to get tenure. I have no time to waste. You don't take the first year off. No. But I had to like figure out how to give a recital in this thing. And we are not like other schools where we are doing really anything face to face. It has been all virtual all year. So they let us in the hall, and especially Chris and I did several pieces for bassoon and marimba, and we're in a living pod, so that was like not an issue, just pre-record. And then I did a couple of unaccompanied laments. The first by Bryn Solomon, who is a composer who actually wrote the piece for piccolo. And I said, will you make a bassoon version? And the composer was agreeable, and that was fantastic. And then also the John Steinmetz new laments that he wrote to be played in isolation. And so I was like, oh, I'll record these at home. I'll lean in. It'll be cool. Okay, so you go to recital, it's a live performance. That doesn't mean it's like okay to bomb, but it's a live performance. We're all in the moment. There's a forgiveness. There's a different mindset.
Yeah, like you bring all your stuff with you. The audience brings all their stuff with them.
We're all in this moment together.
Yeah.
And when you're in the recording studio, that's a completely different mindset. We're trying to document, what is my exact concept of the piece, and I am approaching this in a way that gives me multiple chances to communicate my exact ideas exactly how I mean them. And so there are different expectations and experiences with those types of quote unquote performances. And this is such a middle ground between the two, because ain't nobody doing 25 takes of a whole 7-minute unaccompanied piece.
You get 2 maximum.
Yeah. Honestly, there were some that it was just like we did, but then it's pre-recorded, and so you're listening to it before the audience does, and it's like, oh my god, that one thing, blah blah blah. That if I walked off stage, I'd be like, that was pretty darn good. I'm happy with that. And so that is what it's gotten in my mind, the COVID performing, straddling the line between recording and live performance. And so that was an experience, but that was like not the funnest, but what was the funnest was eating ice cream while watching myself play a recital.
For real.
So I guess, you take the good with the bad, the bitter with the sweet.
I wonder if this like straddling the two worlds of recording and live performance has affected like a lot of people's programming choices.
It should have impacted mine.
Maybe gone a little more conservative with the programming and done things that you've done before, and
Yeah, I was more like, especially for some of the pieces with Chris and I, we were like, we won't be performing for a while, so this is a chance to dig in and learn some of these harder pieces and start to tackle some of these harder pieces. And so we were like, oh my gosh. But what has performing looked like for you during this pandemic? Because your situation is very different than mine.
Yeah, I have been slowly jumping back into orchestra gigs. And this past weekend, I did a chamber music rehearsal retreat for a recording that we're planning for the summer. And it has been distancing, masks, like playing masks, bell covers. I have to say, the mask, once I got used to it, was not that, it was inconvenient and it was too hot and annoying, but it wasn't like I got used to that. But like the bell cover is such a problem.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It just put my tuning in such a weird place. It was really horrendous.
But when you wear a mask, that conveniently covers up ugly double reed embouchure face.
That is true. Although that has not affected the videographer's perspectives, because when this orchestra performance was like live streamed, my parents were watching and they're like, yeah, honey, you were too far away from the mic. We couldn't really hear you. And the camera didn't really sit on you at all. And like, yeah, they're trained well. They're like, we saw a lot of the principal flute. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, they always look good. What else is new?
But like playing Playing in an orchestra, it was really hard because you're so far away from everyone. I
Mm.
mean, I gigged with Baton Rouge a couple of times, and the winds and brass are up in the choir loft of this giant church, and the strings and the conductor are down like on the main level.
And you're in a church, so it's got major echo and delay.
Yeah, there was a lot of echo. And so you're easily 100 feet from the conductor. And so at a certain point, you're like, yeah, we're late. We're late. We're going to be late. It's just late. Like trying to negotiate playing with the rest of your section across the choir loft and with the strings and the conductor was like, all right, we're just late.
We don't have these skills. I mean, I guess if we were in marching band, you kind of got some of the, although, you know what, this is bringing back memories. When I was at the University of Iowa, the tail end of me being at Iowa was the very start of Andrew Parker, UT Austin, Andrew Parker's career. And he coached our grad student quintet. And I remember there was one coaching, he had us turn. So instead of facing each other, we had our backs to each other in the different corners on the perimeter of the room to get us to play together kind of more intuitively, play with our ears and not our eyes, essentially. And I'm like, that was good pre-COVID training. Like, little did we know what an applicable skill.
But yeah, in this quintet rehearsal retreat, we rehearsed at a school, and so we had to follow school protocol. So it was, distance and mask and bell cover, and we could only play for 30 minutes at a time in a space. So we would play 30 minutes and then go to another room and play 30 minutes and then come back to the first room and play 30 minutes, which honestly was a blessing in disguise because my face lasted the entire weekend.
I was going to say that would be great for endurance. Like chamber music retreat equals my teeth are going through my face. But
yeah.
But this would help avoid that.
Yeah. It was kind of cool in that regard. And then of course you're just like dripping with sweat and your face is itchy and all that stuff. But
well, if you're listening to this in 2060, listening to our tales of COVID playing, just be glad for your hoverboards and that you're living on Mars.
What do you think oboes and bassoons will look like in 2060? Do you think we'll finally have plastic reeds that work?
We have plastic reeds that work.
Stop bragging.
Founded by Logan Esterling, Reed Design is pushing the boundaries of oboe and English horn reed making. They take the knowledge they've collected from hundreds of reeds and, with the power of machine learning, derive patterns and trends that accurately predict the characteristics of finished reeds while early in the sorting process. The result is quality reeds with characteristics you can count on. Using their products will save you valuable time and let you get back to what you love, making music. Visit www.reeddesign.io to learn more. That's REEDESIGN.io.
Chemical City Double Reeds is a full-service double reed shop specializing in the sale of instruments, cane, accessories, and sheet music. Double Reed Dish listeners can enjoy free shipping with code DRDISH, all caps, no spaces. Visit them in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or online at chemicalcityreeds.com.
We are so excited to welcome to Double Reed Dish Lori Wike, Principal Bassoon of the Utah Symphony. Welcome, Lori, to Double Reed Dish.
Hello, thanks for having me.
We always love to start by asking our guests how they came to play their instrument. So could you tell us how you were first introduced to the bassoon?
Yes, actually, I was going into junior high, starting 7th grade, and I met with the band directors the summer before, where they had us buzz on mouthpieces. They talked to us. They had us do an aptitude test, different things. And eventually, at the end, I remember the high school band director who was there. He said, "How about the bassoon? We need a bassoon player." And I said, "Sure. What's a bassoon?" I had no idea. I was really lucky. Well, not in the instrument that they gave me. It wasn't very pretty, so I wouldn't even call it lamp worthy. But but they put me in contact with a wonderful woman, Robbie Dobson, who was a string orchestra teacher and one of the schools in the county I grew up in, and a very, very fine bassoonist who started me from day one. I had private lessons from day one, and it was very helpful. So that's how it started.
And at what point along your journey did you begin to think, I think I want to pursue this as a career? And how did you go about embarking on your professional path and professional training?
I think I played the bassoon about 2 weeks, and I announced that, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Yeah, I really liked it. I mean, it was, absurd and impulsive, but I followed through. So, I loved it instantly. And I studied for 2 years with Robbie, and she ended up moving. I moved up to Virginia, and so at that time I had some old back issues of the instrumentalist from my band directors, and there was an advertisement from Mark Popkin advertising the Glickman-Popkin Bassoon Camp and Mark Popkin's Bassoon Camp by the Sea. And I said, oh, he's in North Carolina, so there's an address. So I wrote a letter, and it's kind of funny. I found the letter. My mother sent it to me, where I introduced myself to Mark Popkin and asked him if he would consider taking me on as a private student. I told him I could play up to real high D. In fact, in the letter, it's pretty precious.
That's adorable.
Yeah, that was cute. And he, wonderful man. And so I began studying with him just before I started the 9th grade. And just, he was so phenomenal. I would drive I didn't drive. My father would drive me 2.5 hours up for lessons with him. And he would say, come back in about an hour. And so my dad would go do whatever. And he'd come back in an hour, and, we were just getting started. So these lessons would last 3-4 hours. I mean, oh, wow. He was such a generous, kind, brilliant man. And, I learned so much from him. And, we started with reed making. We started with, it's like, oh, well, let's hear your single tonguing. Okay, good. That's very good. All right, let's start double tonguing right now. I mean, it was like, oh, okay, great. So I was so lucky to have these wonderful teachers very early on. And it was very, very helpful for me. And so I continued in public schools for several more years. And then I was thrilled my senior year of high school. I got to go to North Carolina School of the Arts. They've changed the name now. University of North Carolina School of the Arts is now. And so then I was able to study, with Popkin every week, not just a lesson, but a weekly studio class, read class, everything. And it was just incredible, the intensity of the study, and it shaped me so much as a player. And so that was my early training there. And then I ended up going to Eastman for college, where I studied with the wonderful John Hunt, and just being in a studio with so many fantastic players, and a fantastic school. And so that was the initial path.
What happened after that? How did you find your way to the Utah Symphony?
Pretty circuitous path. So I was very fortunate as an undergraduate. I won a 1-year position playing with the Louisville Orchestra. Wow. And it was, I played contrabassoon and basically utility bassoon. In the summer, I played second bassoon with them. But it was kind of a trial by fire for contrabassoon, as I didn't have a great deal of experience with it, but you could get around the instrument. But I learned very quickly in that year. And but I ended up playing much more bassoon than contrabassoon in the course of that year. And, this was a great experience working with Matthew Carr, who still is principal bassoon there, I believe. No, I believe that's different now. But anyway, Matthew Carr was principal bassoon in Louisville, and just phenomenal person and player. And it was a great year for me. At the same time, I had been back at school. I was not double majoring. It was a little complicated with that, but I got 2 minors through the University of Rochester, film studies and comparative literature. So I had, multiple interests going on. And when I returned to Eastman, I ended up applying for a 5th year through the University of Rochester, a Take 5 Scholars Program, which basically enabled me to have, more credits, enough credits for many, many minors, actually. But so I got a free 5th year of academic study at the University of Rochester in a self-designed program called Critical Theory and the Interpretation of Cultural Texts. And so I had, these academic interests that were kind of working, going along in parallel with my, intense musical training and my love of music. And so I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to go with that. So after I finished up in Louisville the 1 year, I returned to finish my undergraduate degree. And it started off kind of as a lark, but I decided, well, maybe I'll apply to graduate programs in an academic field. Anyway, long story short, I ended up going to University of California at Irvine for graduate work, and I got a master's degree in comparative literature. Technically, I was in a PhD program, and I stopped after I got the master's degree, so PhD dropout. I realized in the course of my graduate studies that I missed playing full time. I still played. I played with a wonderful quintet out in Southern California, and played a lot with the kind of the Inland Empire Orchestra, San Bernardino, Redlands, Riverside, while I was there subbing. And but I realized, I really do want to play the bassoon as my main focus. It was just, I was young, trying to figure out what I wanted to have be my career, and what I wanted to have be more my side interest at the time. But it was, I certainly don't regret it. I learned so much in that program. I got to study with the philosopher Jacques Derrida. He was on faculty in the Comp Lit department, and just phenomenal, incredible experience, even though at the time I realized, I really want to be playing the bassoon. So I ended up getting into New World Symphony right after I finished the master's degree component at Irvine. And so I moved to Miami Beach, and New World, of course, is, this incredible, I don't know what you would call it, proving ground. It's a wonderful experience. And it's very intense. There's, a great deal of focus on winning auditions. There's an incredible kind of orchestral placement rate from New World. And it's just an environment where everyone around you is preparing for auditions, is doing mock auditions, is taking auditions. And so you're living and breathing it. And it's that kind of intensity, I think, is almost necessary for winning an audition, given how competitive they are. So I took many auditions, and then I ended up getting a trial period with Utah. I had a 2-week trial. There were 6 of us given trial periods, and then I won the job. And I've been here now, 15 years.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
When a lot of us look at our musical journey and our training, so much of the emphasis is placed on like the intensity and a hyper focus, perhaps to the exclusion of other things. I've thought many times I wish I could go back and do my gen eds that I resented as being a waste of time. There's things I know I didn't invest in learning. I was just kind of like notches in the belt, to the bassoon. And now that I'm older, I wish I hadn't done that. But we're kind of given this message of like, go, 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 now, now, now. Every minute you're not practicing, someone else is, and this kind of scarcity mindset. And you allowed and made room for other things in your life and to learn and grow in ways that were not just musical. And I'd love to kind of hear you talk about how that impacted or clarified your path, if you were able to avoid burnout or fatigue, or if you feel like it improved your audition and your perspective to have this different, to not buy into the scarcity mindset.
That's a great question. What I have seen among many musicians I know is that we become kind of funneled into this career early on, and we're very good. We're good at it. We see success, and it is a very intense trajectory. And I think that a lot of people don't have that opportunity to step back and say, "I'm good at this. This is what I know how to do. But is this what I want to do?" Mm-hmm. And for me, I at one point said, "I don't think I want to do this. I'm going to stop this. I'm going to turn to something else and see if this is what I want to do as a career focus." And ultimately I decided, I really miss performing. It's more important to me than I thought. But I felt like I made the conscious choice. I had an early taste of what orchestral life is like, the positives and the negatives. So I was going in eyes wide open when I made the decision, okay, this is what I want to do for a career. Knowing that I had this point where I made a conscious choice that I know what this is about. I could have done something else, but I'm going to do this. Does that prevent burnout, fatigue, exhaustion? Maybe to some extent, not always, but I made the choice versus just kind of being caught up in a wave, if that makes any sense.
Did you feel like when you made the choice to return back to taking auditions, like New World Symphony, I don't need to tell you, it's a very competitive opportunity. So did you experience like feeling like you'd lost time, or when your goals were clarified, was it easy for you to step back into preparing for what you were hoping to achieve?
I would say a little bit of both. I think to some degree it was the hyper focus I had, as a teenager, as a 19-year-old, when I first started taking auditions, and I did quite well, 19, 20, 21, that to some extent, my lack of knowledge may have been a boon for me in auditions. Whereas I grew as a person, I grew as a player, I grew as a musician. Auditions are an unusual animal. Mm. So I think if I had continued taking just a lot of auditions very, very early on, in my late teens, very early 20s, they may have been a little easier for me. When I took auditions from New World, sometimes I would not make it past the prelims. Sometimes I would make it to semis. Sometimes I would make it to finals. Sometimes a runner up, it's just trial, you start to get into a zone where at a certain point you're performing very well at each audition, although you could never, of course, control what a committee is listening for or what they happen to want. I don't think taking the time off made me better at auditioning. I think it made me a better musician, put it like that.
Mm-hmm. So part of your continued interest outside of the bassoon is a mastery of the palindrome. Can you tell us more about this and some of the amazing opportunities that you have had?
Sure. Yes, I have a kind of side obsession with writing palindromes, and I've had that for, I don't know, about 10 years now. I've always been, very fascinated with language, just from my background in comparative literature and critical theory and all of that. But I started writing palindromes probably about 10 years ago, and I was aware of palindromes. I thought they were interesting, but I encountered online this magazine called The Palindromist, and it had a forum where people would write their own palindromes. And I said, wow, I had never thought about writing palindromes. I just thought of palindromes as being kind of an object. And I thought, I wonder if I could write a palindrome. And so I started. I wrote a palindrome. I submitted it to the forum, and the editor of the magazine, Mark Saltveit, was very encouraging, and I was like, that's great, and just kind of kept encouraging me to write more. And he's now a friend of mine. And anyway, I slowly got into this palindrome community, which I should say is extremely a very, very small community. I mean, we think the Bassoon community, the double reed community is small, but I mean, we're talking micro. There aren't that many people who do this, at least obsessively. And at the same time, something was happening. Will Shorts, Puzzle Master, was hosting the first World Palindrome Championship. And I read about this and I thought it was hilarious. I was like, oh, I'm going to design a bracket like, March Madness, but for palindromists. And, and so I'm reading about this, and I was like, this is crazy. How do you have competitive palindroming, And so I followed the whole story. I thought it was fascinating. I said, I want to do this. And so I started writing more palindromes. There's a yearly palindrome kind of best of celebration called the Simmies, like the Emmys, but SYMMYS. And so I started submitting palindromes to this, and I started to get to know the people in the guys in the palindrome community, and we're on email lists together. And anyway, Will then decided he would have a second World Palindrome Championship, and so I ended up participating in this. This was in 2017. And what was really kind of fun about this is we had some documentary filmmakers who had decided they wanted to make a film about the World Palindrome Championship. And so they filmed not only the championship, but they came to visit the competitors, in our homes. So I had a good time taking the filmmakers around to see some of the sites of Utah, and they got to film a brief clip of me in the orchestra playing Beethoven 4. There's certain fair use agreements and things, but so I was like, okay, I had to set them up with the exact timing. Like, this is the fourth movement. You've got to get this, and talk about pressure, knowing it's going to be in a film.
It's nerve-wracking enough, and then
like, all right, gotta nail it. So yeah, there's a little brief clip of me in the film doing that, and then with me working with one of my fabulous students at the time, Amanda Hales. We did the Bach Crab Canon together. We played that, which was a lot of fun, talking about musical palindromes. And then because I was playing Beethoven 4 that week, I had her playing it backwards, talking about practicing with variations, things like that. Anyway, so I ended up going to this World Palindrome Championship, and I was runner-up I lost by 0.3 of a point. The winner, Martin Clear, he is he's Australian and a terrific guy and brilliant palindromist. He's been writing palindromes far longer than I have, and very deserving winner. But 0.3 of a point.
That's amazing.
It was a lot of fun because it's the kind of thing my experience in taking auditions, is that the best part was, hanging out with all my bassoon friends, after it was over, because it's sure it's competitive, but I think that at least in much of the bassoon community that it's a kind of friendly mindset, and it's the same sort of thing in this palindrome community where writing palindromes is this very solitary activity. It takes time, and the idea that you're doing it in a timed fashion with extra constraints thrown on, is kind of crazy. So we're all doing something that is, inherently not really competitive, but and we're having fun with it. And it was a great experience. And it was very odd because I was trying to prepare for this palindrome competition, and all I knew how to prepare for were bassoon auditions. And so kind of trying to take my audition mindset and apply it to palindromes was kind of an interesting thing for me.
So I want to know how you connected those two in applied practical terms. And I also want to know if you would share a palindrome with us.
Sure. Yeah. So as I was preparing, I thought I was trying to anticipate the different constraints that Will Shortz might ask us to do. I knew that he, in the first palindrome championship, he had certain constraints. Write a palindrome that uses a Y and an X, perhaps, or a Y and a Z and a W. I can't remember exactly, but it was, you threw an additional constraint into the mix. And so I started trying to anticipate things that could potentially be asked. And one of my I remember this because I took a Rocky style picture of myself pretending to do a one-armed push-up while studying on a sheet of paper, words with Q without U, because if you use Q in a palindrome, you can't really use QU. It's possible. But anyway, I actually predicted one of the constraints that was asked in the first night of the competition, which was, write a palindrome using Q without a U. So I had this list of all the Q words that did not have U in them. And then I did this kind of trick photography image of myself, with the red bandana, Rocky style. And what was funny is that they didn't know it was a trick photograph. My palindrome friends, they thought I could really do one-armed push-ups, which is hilarious. So, anyway, it was kind of fun. But one of my palindromes. Okay, I'll give you a couple. I have to, they're very visual, so it's hard to you have to kind of see them in the film. The filmmakers did such a wonderful job with animations and showing how it works.
Sure.
Anyway, this is a short one I wrote. Edit never even one disaster frets aside, no never eventide. That's a short one. And then I wrote one since the solstice is coming up. This one is called Midwinter. Craned dusk, radar of tilt, light raw, swarth guilt, lit for a dark, sudden arc. Then I've done all kinds of fun things. I like to combine, I like to make palindrome limericks, call them polymericks. They're very difficult to do with the rhyme scheme and the syllable scheme combined with palindromes. So I don't know that I've ever written any that I think are really great palindromes, but it's a kind of a fun mental exercise to do.
That's great. It's so, I wasn't expecting it to be so poetic.
It's that's kind of one of our categories in our yearly celebration of palindromes, the Simmies, is palindrome poetry. So whether it's, from the absurd, the polymericks to, I have a friend, Anthony Etherin, very, very brilliant poet and palindromist in Shropshire, England, who writes palindrome sonnets. He writes everything. And so I kind of taking a cue from Anthony, I started exploring more poetic forms, written a lot of palindrome haiku, for example. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So, but a lot of palindromes are very silly. Those were, not necessarily silly palindromes. Those happen to be the ones that I really like. But uh, um, I also like to write the fun, silly, absurd palindromes. Sometimes they combining with political commentary, which adds extra fun.
I love the Rocky connection, and so many times, musical preparation is compared to athletic preparation. And you spoke a lot about anticipating what the person evaluating is going to want. And is there any overlap in this preparation or anticipation in terms of auditioning and the success you found in that preparation?
Yeah, I would say you never want to try to, anticipate what a committee is listening for. I mean, you just have to go in and you have to play like you play and play in a way that is convincing and makes sense to you. And if they like it, great. And if they don't like it, okay. But to a certain extent, we spent all this time training and doing mock auditions. So of course we're anticipating what is to be expected. You can say that, well, there's no wrong way of playing blah, blah, blah. But there are certainly ways that are more right than others. There's a range of kind of traditionally accepted interpretations, for example. And I think you learn a lot when you've been on a lot of audition committees on the other side of the audition screen, listening and what people are looking for, and just the fact that the people on the other side of the screen are not all bassoon players. They play all different instruments, and so they're not necessarily listening for the same hyper focused things that a bassoonist might be listening to.
Tell us more about that, about some lessons that you've learned on the other side of the screen. What's important to you when you're listening for a potential colleague?
Well, yes, I've been on a lot of audition committees. Well, you have the things that are necessary, but not sufficient, I would say. So the things that are necessary is you have to have absolutely accurate, rhythmic pulse precision, and you have to have absolutely, well, I won't say it's perfection, but very, very close to it in terms of pitch. So those are two things that are just necessary, but they're not sufficient. You have to have someone who has something to say musically, and an audition, it's this kind of competitive, almost sports-like environment versus playing in the orchestra, which is, I think, a different percentage of, sport versus art, and in context performance versus one person playing alone in a big hall. And you're trying to imagine, based on what you're hearing in an audition, how that's going to actually work in the orchestra. And, there are things that you simply can't determine. I mean, flexibility is such an important part of the job, and being able to respond on a dime if a conductor asks for something different, then you need to be able to do it right then. And, you can that happens to some extent in a final round, but an audition is more like presenting a recital version of an unaccompanied bassoon pieces, very short unaccompanied bassoon pieces. And so I think it's a different approach than when you are playing it in the orchestra. I think if someone plays an excerpt and they play it in a way where I, as a listener, can almost hear it in context, then, I think that there are ways of conveying that in an audition. But I do think that it's quite different. I mean, for one thing, just simply the amount of reverberation in a hall where people are situated. For many years, when I first started in the orchestra, we would sit out in the hall for auditions. And I think that you can hear a lot better due to the reverberation effect. We now sit on the stage separated by a screen, and so we can hear quite a bit better. Whereas if one person is playing alone in a big hall, that reverberation can distort things, especially at a distance. Again, every acoustic space is different, but that's what we do here.
I remember reading a thread on social media once where oboist actually was lamenting that the Schumann romances appeared on a high school solo ensemble repertoire list. And this person was saying, I don't really want to hear you play music like that until you've lived a bit more and experienced a bit more and learned a bit more. I don't want to hear a 16-year-old play Schumann. And as you were telling us about, learning about literature and writing poetry and thinking about words and cultivating these other parts of yourself, like we discussed, do you feel like that has been a benefit to you as an artist and interpreter, your musicality? Do you feel like that's informed by cultivating other parts of yourself?
I think that for me at least, I think that it has been very helpful because whatever I do, I tend to be very hyper focused and obsessed with it. And we were talking a little bit about, burnout earlier. For me, simply switching gears briefly to obsess on something else and be in kind of a mental flow in something totally not unrelated, but different from what I'm doing every day in the orchestra. It's like getting a good night's sleep almost, and then you wake up refreshed. So for me, I think it keeps me mentally recharged to periodically switch my focus to a different obsession other than the bassoon. And is that true for everyone? No, I don't think so. I think it's always good to try and figure out a way to strike a work-life balance because of just the nature of what we do and just, the level of obsession, the amount of time that is involved. And so I think people have to have kind of something, for me, it's writing palindromes or designing puzzles or, reading continental philosophy, whatever it is that, sparks your interest. I think it's important to, take these breaks. It's like if you're thinking about a problem and what is performing, but you're constantly solving these problems and puzzling things out and figuring out new and better ways to make something beautiful. But if you're focused on a problem and you just simply stay up all night and you're still focused the next day, it's the best thing is to simply stop, get some rest, go do something else, go for a walk. And for me, I'm mentally going for a walk when I spend, 2 hours writing palindromes or I design some sort of ridiculous puzzle, for my friends or the best was the time I did a studio class and I made it an escape room puzzle. That was fun.
That sounds like so much fun.
It was. We had different stations. We had the circular breathing station where, we had all kinds of fun different puzzles, logic puzzles. Of course, I made my students, they had to write a palindrome using the word read, but they couldn't use the word deer in it. So, there were all kinds of fun games for them. And
oh my God, you must publish that specifically for me to use.
I thought we should make Lori be with us at one of our live shows.
Oh my God, yes.
Well, I like to keep studio classes fun. This was more of a, end of the year party. It was a particularly big, large studio that year. And that was a lot of fun. I had a lot of students who were graduating and we had a good time. But I'm known for, doing some studio classes. The one that most of my students remember is it was the finger height studio class where I said, I need a big red buzzer. That's what I need. I'm watching my students, their fingers are just flying off the instrument. And I couldn't find a big red buzzer, but I did find a big red buzzer app on my phone. So I did a studio class where I sat, inches away, if you can even imagine that now, staring at my students' hands. And they just had to play like one line of an etude. And every time their fingers went above a certain height, they got the buzzer. And it was just the most obnoxious sound. And, my sweet, kind, students who I adored I mean, they were just like, by the end of it. So I was laughing, of course, but I found it very, very entertaining. The point was, keep your fingers closer to the keys and things will be easier.
Oh, that sounds like so much fun. It's like beep, 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 beep.
Pretty much.
It's like between the buzzer sound and the expletives from the student. It's just
it was yeah.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And of course, the adversity training studio classes, those are fun.
Adversity training, you are giving me so many ideas.
I know a lot of these studio classes are designed to entertain me, I have to say, but
Do you make them run around the building 3 times and then play something?
Of course, yeah, jumping jacks and dropping things, recording them as they're playing one thing and then playing it back while they're playing something else. It's kind of fun.
This is brilliant. That. I'm going to use every single one of these.
Yeah, for real. If you have one, would you mind sharing a funny or humorous story of something you've experienced related to your bassoon life?
Funny. Okay, I remember this. This is a pretty funny story. So we had Sue Heineman as a guest at the University of Utah for my studio, and in the recital, Sue and I did the Michael Dougherty bounce, and then we had my fabulous second bassoon colleague Jennifer Rhodes here in the Utah Symphony joined us to do one of the Weissenborn trios. And in the recital, we're in the green room, and right before we're going on for the Weissenborn, I'm like, okay, so we all know the roadmap here, right? It's here, and then we go back here, blah 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 blah. You want to make sure that there are no mishaps, right? So we go out on the stage, and we start playing. It sounds fabulous. And then suddenly there is this silence, and I am looking, at my friends here, thinking like, are they not going to play? And then it hits me. Oh, I'm the one who didn't have the roadmap right in my head. And so there's this, this very lengthy moment of silence, and suddenly the realization hits me, and of course we went on, but it was quite funny, particularly because I had made this big deal about, okay, do we all know the roadmap here, and then I was the one who screwed it up.
That's awesome.
So I've gotten a lot of laughs about that one. That was pretty funny.
Lori, would you regale us with a favorite memory from a past performance?
Here's a memorable concert experience. Now that I'm thinking about Michael Dougherty, I was a student in Aspen years ago, and I remember on the programming, I said, oh, look, they're programming Dead Elvis. So I was studying primarily with Nancy Goris, and I said, Nancy, who's doing Dead Elvis? Who's doing this? She's like, I have no idea. Do you want to do it? And so I ended up playing Dead Elvis, and it was the venue was actually a club, which up until the previous year had been kind of this notorious strip club in Aspen. It was no longer that. But anyway, so David Zinman is conducting Dead Elvis in this former strip club. And then one of the other bassoon students is controlling the lights. And I didn't have, a white rhinestone jumpsuit, but I did find a green suede, vintage jumpsuit creation that was just beautiful from a thrift store there.
Elvis inspired.
Yeah. And, I made something to make the sideburns and, that was a memorable experience for me. I just remember thinking, wow, this is very surreal.
What is your advice for a young musician who aspires to have a career like yours?
My advice for someone who wants to, play the bassoon professionally is one, to know just how competitive the field is, and that they'll have to make a lot of sacrifices, more than likely, to have that career. Generally speaking, I think, you always hear the advice from people that if there's something else that you would like to do other than music, you should probably do that. But if what you really, really want to do is music, then okay, go for that. But I think it's difficult for young players to understand what the reality of the this field is like. And I don't know that you can really explain that to someone. I think it's something everyone has to kind of learn on their own. It's odd to explain even to professionals in other careers, what it's like. I remember taking an audition years ago, and some of my bassoon friends and I, we were sharing a cab together, talking to the driver. The driver's like, "Oh, so they flew you out here for this, this interview?" We're like, no. We fly ourselves out here, and they're like, so that they don't put you up, or they don't pay for your plane ticket. And they're like, well, how long is this interview process? And like, well, the first round might last 5 minutes.
It sounds ridiculous when you say that.
Yeah, it does. It does. And it's like, so you just flew across the entire country to play for 5 minutes. And I think that's a really difficult thing to grasp at a young age. And, probably not knowing how difficult it is maybe an advantage to some degree.
What if we close out with fun projects you have coming up?
Well, one thing that's interesting, Utah Symphony is one of the orchestras that is currently working right now. We actually were performing live concerts from September through the end of November. And our cultural venues are now closed for live audiences, but in the month of December, we've been still recording for broadcast and streaming purposes, and that looks like that will be the case for the next couple of months as well. But so it's quite an experience to perform under these conditions and with a very carefully crafted and stringent safety plan. I was actually on our safety task force this summer trying to help devise something that would allow us to return to work in some sort of capacity. So I've actually been playing quite a lot lately, and it's everything keeps changing. So I don't quite know what's coming up in the next couple of months, as it may change on a daily basis. But it's all about being flexible right now, and hopefully there will be a return to near normality next season. Is my hope. But at the same time, I think the pandemic has also opened up some doors for us to explore new things and to reevaluate things that are working and things that are not working, and to play new repertoire. For example, we've been doing chamber repertoire, both chamber orchestra and chamber music, and so getting to explore this repertoire that in a large symphony is not done so frequently, I think that has been really fun to play this repertoire that I simply don't have the opportunity to play quite as frequently. And then you're also able to reach audiences outside of the state, outside, through the broadcast medium. So, I think that there are some positive things that can come out of it that one may want to implement in the long term in terms of reaching people in different ways and going out into the community, in a different way than what is kind of the standard model.
Lori, thank you so much for joining us on Double Reed Dish. It was such a joy to talk to you, and we really appreciate your generosity in spending your precious time with us. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Okay, we hope you enjoyed that interview. Follow us on social media, rate and review. I'm tired. Who's on the next episode?
Our next episode, we welcome the lovely, the wonderful Jaren Atherholt, assistant professor of oboe at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. Jackie, it is definitely time to end this nerd parade.
Go make reads.
Wah, wah.